the op-ed that I published this morning at hartmannreport.com is titled, "We Must Choose Democracy or War." And, you know, this morning the strongman dictator of Russia used 28 kamikaze drones from the theocratic dictators of Iran to attack the capital of Ukraine, a democracy. Now, some of my tragically misguided former colleagues in the media and guests on my program on the left are joining with some of the most virulent Trump-humping Orban Putin lovers on the right and calling for Ukraine to simply surrender a fifth of their country to Russia in exchange for peace, as if giving other people's sovereign land to violent dictators has ever led to peace. And what these people on both sides, both political sides, the far right who are saying, oh yeah, just give them the land, and the people on the far left who are saying, oh yeah, just give Putin the land, what they're both missing is that, you know, the power of democracy to prevent wars. Now, I realize there are exceptions to that, and we've seen those exceptions right here in the United States. George W. Bush with Iraq and Afghanistan, Richard Nixon, and, well, Lyndon Johnson and Vietnam. And I'll get to that in just a moment. But generally speaking, and there are certainly exceptions to this, there's a whole wiki full of them, but generally speaking, most wars, and certainly most major wars, are started by countries that are run by a single dictator for all practical purposes. What you could call a strongman kind of government. And I'm not making this gender neutral because, 99% of the time it is a man. Maybe 100%, I don't know, but certainly in the 90s. The old refrain goes, nobody really wants war, but it's always followed by a but. And that is, there's a deep truth buried in that. Nobody really wants war. But that's for the citizens. The citizens don't want war. The people of countries don't want war because they know, the cost of war. It's blood, not to mention, treasure. But wars, in fact, are almost always initiated by autocrats grasping for more wealth or power or trying to prop themselves up in the face of popular revolt. Whether it was the British attacking us in 1775 or in 1812, or the Confederacy attacking us in 1861, or Hitler attacking Poland in 1939, or Japan attacking, or was that 37? Forgive me for mixing those up. In any case, Japan attacking China in the 40s and then ultimately attacking us at Pearl Harbor, whether it was Russia attacking Ukraine, it's really difficult to find a major war that wasn't started by oligarchs, dictators, or kings. And, this is why we have three really dangerous things going on in the world right now. Number one, you've got Russia attacking Ukraine. Number two, you've got the dictator of Saudi Arabia attacking Yemen and basically attacking the United States and siding with Russia by cutting oil production. And you have the Chinese Communist Party handing another 5 years of unparalleled power. I mean, this is Mao Zedong level power to Chairman Xi or President Xi. And, what happens when one man has that kind of power, the kind of power that Putin has or had, I think it's slipping through his fingers. But what happens when one man has that kind of power, and Xi has, and Mohammed MBS has, is that they start to believe their own PR. They start to believe that they're invincible. They start to think that, it doesn't matter what the people want. And hey, war is a fun thing. War distracts people. War creates a rally around the flag effect, which is, what we all saw in 2001 when we were attacked on 9/11 by Osama bin Laden and his merry band. And George W. Bush used that to get himself reelected in 2004. Now, war is, shall we say, problematic in American history. You had Lyndon Johnson basically lying to the country for years about the Gulf of Tonkin attack, Now, Robert McNamara, who was his defense secretary, apparently lied to LBJ about that. And LBJ didn't find out about this until 3 or 4 weeks down the road when we had already committed, troops to Vietnam, where the war was essentially declared. And at that point, LBJ thought, okay, I can't back out of this, which, is no justification, and I'm not trying to justify it. But, that's what happened there. Then, and Nixon, of course, knew that it was a lie. Bush, and in fact, then Nixon cut a deal with the South Vietnamese to keep the war going, because that's the power of war. Bush Sr. knew that he was lying when he brought in PR specialists and the Kuwaiti royal family members to lie to America on live television about babies being thrown out of incubators. Bush Jr. and Dick Cheney knew that they were lying when they tweaked intelligence and lied to America about weapons of mass destruction and Saddam's supposed involvement in 9/11. Now, I would argue that the benefit of a democracy is that, of a transparent democracy, is that leaders can't get away with these lies. But obviously, these leaders did get away with them. And in part, I think that that's in part because we have a media that is largely captured by billionaires and giant corporations that is not interested in holding leaders to account for their lies. I think it's one of the reasons that Donald Trump and his crew have gotten away with as much as they've gotten away with. And for that, you can thank Citizens United and the two decisions preceding it, Buckley and Bellotti, that basically created an oligarchy. This is what Jimmy Carter told me on this show, on the air on this show, back in July of 2015. In fact, I could share this audio with you. This is President Jimmy Carter in July of 2015, right here on this program, telling us what he thinks about that.
It violates the essence of what made America a great country.
He's talking about Citizens United.
In its political system. Now it's just an oligarchy with unlimited political bribery being the essence of getting the nominations for president or the elected president. And the same thing applies to governors and U.S. senators and Congress members. So now we've just seen a complete subversion of our political system as a payoff to major contributors who want and expect and sometimes get favors for themselves after the election's over.
Yeah. That's President Jimmy Carter on this show, 7 years ago. 2015. That's 7 years ago. Yeah, just laying it out. And I mean, this is the crisis that we are facing. And so, I'm intentionally entangling these two issues of war and peace and democracy and a functioning democracy, frankly. And the point I'm trying to make here is that, if we are really and truly interested in stopping wars, we need to be promoting democracies around the world. They're not perfect, and yes, they do get into wars with each other, but not on the level and not with the frequency that you see coming out of dictatorships and strongman governments like you have now in China, where Xi has just said over the weekend, yes, I want to take Taiwan by force. And of course, Putin is doing the same thing with Ukraine. So number one, if you don't want war, you do want democracy. You want more democracy. But beyond that, number two, we have democracy here in the United States, sort of. And this is the problem, is that the Supreme Court has turned us, as Jimmy Carter just said, into an oligarchy, ruled by the rich. And, some of the rich are the defense industries. Some of the rich are people who profit from wars. Some of the rich are people like George H.W. Bush and George W. Bush, who, were basically oligarchs and lied us into 3 different wars: the first war in Iraq, the second war in Iraq, and the war in Afghanistan. And this shouldn't be. So frankly, in my opinion, the way that we need to reverse this oligarchic trend in the United States is to reverse these Supreme Court decisions. And that's essentially the call for action at the end of my article today at HartmannReport.com, is that not only do we need to be supporting democracies around the world, including Ukraine, but we also need to be building democracy here in the United States. so that we don't end up following another Bush or another, wannabe right-wing Republican down another war rat hole.